Good morning out there, good afternoon, or good evening to you wherever you are. In this video, we're going to talk about the definition of the word project. Now, you don't know me yet, so stepping into this, I want to emphasize that I am the last person on the planet that would ever ask anyone to memorize a definition without a really good reason. As far as I'm concerned, there's a part of your brain that has already memorized any definition and any statistic that you'll ever need, and that part of your brain is called Google. So please believe me when I tell you that if you don't fully learn the definition of what a project is, at least in its technical sense, then this will have huge negative repercussions on your future work lives. Here's why. If you take any course on project management, you're probably going to learn several planning tools, numerous work techniques, workflows, communication techniques, things that are new to you. Work breakdown structures, PERT charts, work package specifications, controlling techniques, yada, yada, yada. And then, in the future, if you're involved in a work endeavor that truly deserves the title of project, most of these tools and techniques are going to be incredibly useful to you. But if the work undertaking that you've been assigned simply got labeled project by someone, but isn't really a project in the technical sense of the definition, well then, those very same tools and techniques, they're not going to help you. In fact, most of them are going to be counterproductive if you use them. Nowadays, everything gets labeled as a project. Building a train station, project. Planning a company retreat, project. Picking up a telephone with one of those old rotary dials, project. The word project is omnipresent. Sometimes it's used to make people feel more important about what they're being asked to do, because suddenly they're managing a project rather than just picking up the Chinese delegation from Vienna airport. And even more often, it's simply used because we can't think of a different word to call a task, so we just call it a project kind of on autopilot. Subjectively, I would guess that a good 70% of the work that got called projects in all the offices around the world in the last 24 hours falls into one of these two previous categories. But they most certainly are not projects in the true sense of the definition. But who cares what you call it, right? Well, I'll start with you in the front row, the handsome dude in the Hawaiian shirt. You seem to be a dedicated, hard-working individual, and now you're applying yourself to learning the tools of project management. So far, so good. A few months down the road, you might be assigned your first project. Only, spoiler alert, it won't be a project in the real sense. But being the ambitious little high potential that you are, you will immediately make use of the entire arsenal of project management tools you've learned about. You'll split fairly simple work into 10 different work packages. You'll request that everyone involved provides thorough weekly project documentation. You and your team will compile numerous different project plans, and you'll even set up a whole little project organizational structure. The problem, of course, is the work you've been assigned isn't a real project. It only got labeled that by someone. And that means most of the project management steps you're taking are entirely unnecessary. Actually, scratch that. Worse than unnecessary. They are senseless bureaucracy that won't make your final result even 1% better, but will slow everything down, raise costs, and alienate a lot of talented people from ever wanting to work with you again. Now, I'm not saying that for one of these fake projects, it doesn't make sense to use 2, 3, or even 4 project tools that are out there. Go for it, dude in the Hawaiian shirt. It's probably a good idea. But don't go all out. You need to measure the utility of each tool or technique before you decide to use it. You need to ask yourself two questions. What is the value added if I use this tool or this document or this communication approach? And then you need to compare that with the question, what are all the costs of using this tool? Costs in terms of money, time, resources, stress, and demotivation of other people. Only if A is greater than B do you put that tool into your little shopping cart. Otherwise, you leave it right on the shelf where it belongs. Choose wisely. What's that? What? Gerhard, what is the definition of a real project, you say? Well, I'm so happy you asked. The criteria are really quite simple. First, a project needs to have a clear start and a clear end. Second, it needs to work with limited resources. Both of these criteria apply even to all fake projects, so there's no big revelations here yet, guys. 3, a project needs to have clearly defined goals. Well, many fake projects have goals too, though probably not as explicit or as precisely thought through as should be standard for a real project. 4, a project needs to involve something that is new and unique for the main people doing it. Something that these people don't do every day, and that something must also raise a lot of collective question marks from everybody involved. That is the first useful distinction. If what you're doing is fairly foreign to the people involved, then bringing in planning steps and project documentation and project controlling will provide structure, security, and many valuable insights. On the other hand, though, if most of the people involved have done this type of work so often that they can do it in their sleep, then most of those very same tools and techniques would simply be senseless, bureaucratic productivity killers. Now comes the big one, number 5. A project needs to be a complex activity. I hear what you're saying. Yeah. You're right. What constitutes as complex or as not complex sort of lies in the brain of the beholder. But you can safely assume that if the work you'll be doing can be completed within the structure of your normal line department or within your normal team without experts from many other functional areas, maybe even from outside the company, well then what you're doing, probably not a project. And that brings us to the 6th criterion. Because of the complexity and the need for experts from so many different fields, the only way to sensibly coordinate everything is to add an additional independent organizational structure for your project work. So an organizational structure that's in addition to the company's already existing structure. Perhaps a project team with its own set of reporting relationships and authorities vis-à-vis other departments. If, in the cold light of day, you realize that such an additional organizational structure isn't really necessary to achieve the desired result, well then, you've guessed it, probably not a real project. So there you have it, mesdames et messieurs. Signore, signori, if all 6 of these criteria are present in your next work undertaking, then channel your inner Rambo and use the entire arsenal of project management tools and techniques. You're welcome. But if even one of these 6 criteria is absent, then consider very carefully, one by one, per project management tool, per project management workflow, per project management communication method, whether it's really necessary and useful to use it, or whether, in fact, the cost may far outweigh the potential benefit. Welcome to our seminar. I'm Gerhard.